Welcome back. Or if you were not here for the last session, welcome. So this is the Healthy Sexuality in an Unhealthy World seminar. We're in session 2, Current Issues in Sexuality. I mentioned earlier our tagline with Ultimate Escape is you can learn a lot about sex from and then fill in the blank. I think the first one we'll encounter with this presentation is from a s'more. But we'll get to that in just a few minutes. And the next time you eat a s'more, you might have a few more thoughts about it than you have before. Okay, current challenges in our culture from a sexuality standpoint. I would say, and this is not in like rank order, just here are different things that are challenges. Distorted perceptions or images that just bombard us. There are so many different perceptions of what is okay or what's not okay. What should somebody do? Who is somebody? The images that we see, even, eye level to a 4 or 5-year-old walking through your typical convenience store checkout line or grocery store checkout line. The images that they see are sexual in nature. I'm not saying they're graphically porn or that it's nude, but those images are designed from a graphic standpoint. They're designed to grab sexual attention. And the images that fly through past the eyes of our children, whether we're talking 3-year-olds or 15-year-olds, those images on TV commercials, on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, in movies, the images can be extremely disturbing. Holly and I were watching a show last night, and one of the scenes, it has a laptop open on a porn site. That might have lasted, 3 seconds. I mean, it was a pretty quick little boom in the, but if a 7-year-old had seen that doesn't just leave their eyes. And so something that may just be a few seconds of exposure can become a complicating thing in a person's ideas of what sex is or what it's not or what it's supposed to be. So those distorted images and perceptions, I'm just saying, they create a challenge in our kids developing in a healthy or a sexually healthy way. There is a disconnect in our culture between sex and emotions. And I'm not meaning to imply it's only in our culture or that it's only in the last 15 years. Nothing new under the sun. And if you go back to Genesis, there was a lot more distortion and perversion about sex than there is here. If you go back to first century Corinth, there was a lot more distortion and imagery than there is now. But comparison doesn't do any benefit. It's just to recognize we're not unique in this, but it still has an effect. I'm going to show a clip from a movie. At this point, it's kind of an older movie. Matter of fact, I would assume that probably the average 15-year-old may not even heard of this movie because it's several years old, meaning it's not the last 3 years. It's not 20. I don't think it's 20 years old. I haven't been doing Ultimate Escape 20 years, but it probably goes back 10 or 12. And again, it may be more than that. I just slept too many times since that. But I'm going to let it play and then we're going to unpack. Now, please understand this is a highly edited movie trailer. This is not the full trailer. This is what I thought I could get away with showing in a church without people getting up and leaving. So it's edited, but it is still, it's raw.
You probably shouldn't snuggle.
Yeah, that just felt wrong.
I think I'm falling for her.
That's a horrible idea. You're living every guy's dream right now. Why would you mess that up?
I really like you.
You always find these perfect guys, and then you're like, it'll never work.
I think monogamy goes against our basic biology. Go hook up with someone else.
You're kidding. Okay. I'm gonna call every girl in my phone until someone agrees to have sex with me.
Toast to that. That is a terrible self-destructive plan, and we're behind you 100%.
As I said, highly edited, but there's still some rawness in there. The idea behind the movie, can we just have a physical relationship, like be available? If I want to have sex, there's somebody who will have sex with me, but nothing more. I don't want any snuggling. I don't want any emotional connection. I sure don't want to be like committed. I don't want to have anything demanded of me. Can we just have sex? And basically the storyline goes to, no, that really doesn't work well, which at least there's some authentic truth in it doesn't work well like that. But again, that's the stereotype in our culture, that every guy's dream will be to have this attractive female who will have sex with them and not have to have anything more as far as like an emotional relationship. We could probably do an entire weekend seminar just on that one, if I actually show the whole trailer, just on that one trailer, because there's so many messages about sex in that. I'm just saying that's an idea of the perspective that our kids are growing up with, that our culture is telling them this is what sex should be, or this is the ideal. It's a hyper sexually stimulating culture. You can pretty much go nowhere. You can't go to the grocery store. You sure can't go to Planet Fitness. You can't go anywhere and not experience just right there on some level. It's sexually stimulating because of the way people dress, the way people act, the way people talk. I don't think you could probably go to most churches and not encounter somebody who to you is going to be a challenge, because there's something that you're going to notice that is going to be arousing or attractive to you. Nor am I saying you should be able to go to church and not experience attraction for anybody. That's not realistic. I'm just saying in our culture that is ramped up towards 24/7. So if you have a middle school or high school student every day at school, just realize they're in an environment for hours and hours and hours where they are being stimulated constantly just from a visual standpoint, and the content of what people are saying or the videos that are being shown. It's a challenge. Our kids are growing up in an extremely challenging situation and a lack of healthy processing. Most of our kids and us as adults, we don't have safe places we can process stuff with. There is great value in having a relationship with somebody where you can just pick up the phone and say, this is what I just saw, or this is what I just heard, and here's what's going on in my head, and I just need to talk through it with somebody, because if I don't, it's going to be like a laser. That energy is just going to keep bouncing and bouncing and bouncing inside that box, and it's going to get more intense until finally it comes out where it's really destructive or really powerful. But if I can just process it, we'll talk more about some of this in the session later on tonight, but at least to recognize that when we can process stuff in real time, it's like water in a creek just running through the creek. It's not that much water power. But if you build a dam, over time, that little bit of water in the creek is eventually going to grow up to be a really powerful force to be reckoned with. And if we can just deal with stuff in real time, instead of having it all backlog and then we don't know how to handle that, that makes a big difference. So those are just some of the things that are challenges related to sexuality in our culture in 2024 and has been for a number of years. So we're going to look at three major pillars. And all three of these pillars have other things underneath, but the big umbrella: sexual identity confusion. And when I say confusion, any one person might feel like they're confused, or they might feel like they're not confused at all. It's like, my parents have a problem with what I'm doing. I don't have any problem with what I'm doing. I don't feel confused. This is what I think I am, or who I think I am, or what I think I should do. And so the idea of confusion is kind of in the eye of the beholder. We may, as a responsible adult, we may look at somebody and say, they're really confused. I'm just saying, in their perspective, they might not feel like they're confused at all. We can argue who's in reality, but I'm putting this all under sexual identity confusion because at least in our culture, there is a lot of confusion in our culture. You can learn a lot about sexual identity from a s'more. Okay, a s'more is made up of what? Graham cracker, chocolate, and marshmallow. Right. You can have a chocolate-covered graham cracker. You can have a block of chocolate. You can have a graham cracker. You can have a marshmallow. You can have a chocolate-covered marshmallow. But if you want a s'more, you have to have all three of those things before it's a s'more. You can have a hot marshmallow sandwich between two graham crackers, but if there's no chocolate, it's still not a s'more. So when we talk about sexual identity, there are three major areas that we really have to address, or we're not completely covering the concept of sexual identity. Number one, gender identity, which is different than what gender or what sex am I. Now, I'm going to use some terminology in this presentation that is countercultural. In the deeper dive, we go into a lot more depth of the whole gender identity and gender dysphoria and sexual orientation stuff. We're just hitting some highlights, bird's eye view of this topic in this presentation. So please know I recognize there's a lot more to this than what we're going to cover. But we don't have time to get into all the depth of that in a 1-hour presentation. So gender identity, how does somebody feel about the gender that their body is? I'm going to go back to, if you look at somebody who deals with genetics or chemistry, it's not rocket science. Either the body produces sperm or the body produces egg. And in 99.98% of the time, it's that simple. 99.98. The 0.02 is another thing to have to deal with. But for the vast majority, it's as simple as, does their body produce sperm or does their body produce eggs? If the body produces sperm, they're male. If the body produces eggs, they're female. That's the DNA of it. But the DNA of it does not answer how does somebody feel inside. That's a whole other thing. That's gender identity. And that is a deep topic with a lot of energy around it and a lot of political pressure at the same time in our current culture. I'm just saying, to talk about sexual identity, we've got to have discussion and some understanding, and people need to have some language to be able to talk about what they feel inside. And I'm just saying that what somebody is on the outside doesn't necessarily match how they feel on the inside. That's gender identity. Okay, sexual preference, or the direction of a person's attractions. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. Am I attracted to somebody of the opposite sex? Am I heterosexual? Am I attracted to somebody of my same sex? Am I homosexual? Am I 50-50? Am I 90-10? Because there are some people who are predominantly heterosexual, but they do experience a level of same-sex attraction. For about 3 years, almost all the people I worked with were dealing with sexual identity issues. So I've had a lot of conversation with people who are struggling with, or they're not struggling at 17, but their parents are struggling with what the 17-year-old is wanting to do. And so sometimes it's, how as a family, how are we going to navigate this? What are we going to deal with? Sometimes it doesn't matter to me what person's sexual preference is. We're dealing with the trauma that they've lived through. So we might monitor or occasionally have some level of check-in of just where they are from a sexual standpoint, but that's not the main issue. That's really more of that's kind of a peripheral issue with what has happened to them. But we've got to have some conversation and have language to talk about sexual preference, which is not just cut and dry. Because a person, there isn't I'm either this or I'm this. There's a spectrum there, and if we don't have language or recognize a spectrum, it's easy to just polarize and shut down any level of conversation or relationship. And then behavior. What do I intend to do? Because I might feel on the inside different than what my body is on the outside. And I might be attracted to somebody of my same gender. But that doesn't mean that I have to do anything in particular. Behavior is a choice. Again, please don't mishear. Okay, I did not just say sexual preference is a choice. If you in any way heard the word choice and connected that to I'm saying people can choose who they're attracted to, you misheard me. What I'm saying is behavior is a choice. I choose what I do. I choose my lifestyle. I choose who I have a sexual encounter with. That's a choice. And people can let their behavior be dictated by what they feel. They can let their behavior be guided by what they believe God wants for their life. Those are both choices, and people are free to choose whichever they want to. Now, a person who has committed their life to Jesus, committing your life to Jesus basically says, Jesus, I'm going to use my life in the way you want me to use my life. So there's some direction that comes with making a commitment to Jesus. But making a commitment to Jesus does not change how I feel inside from a sexual attraction standpoint. So when we're talking about same-sex issues, okay, we mentioned gender identity, sexual orientation or sexual preference, and behavior. Okay, so if there's a graham cracker, a marshmallow, and a piece of chocolate, we're talking about the marshmallow here. There's no connection to marshmallow, and I'm just randomly saying, here's a piece of a s'more. We're going to talk about this piece of the s'more right now. So on this slide, we're just talking about one part of the s'more. Are you with me? Okay, nobody took, and I'm not implying anything by using the word marshmallow. Just marshmallow popped up. Okay, that's all there is to it. Access versus attraction. Am I attracted to this person, or do I just have access to them? Let me give you an example of that. I was working with a guy at 14. At 14, his parents brought him in for counseling because they discovered he was having sexual encounters with other guys. There was a group of 4 friends, my client and 3 other guys. My client is 14. He has a friend who is 14. And 2 of the other friends are 16. Okay, so 14, 14, 16, 16. This group of 4 guys has been having sexual encounters for the last 2 years. So it started when my client was 12. And my client would say he is not gay. He is a heterosexual. He has had a girlfriend. He wants to have a girlfriend. That's how he views himself, historically. But now at 14, he is just starting to feel some level of attraction to guys. There has not been an attraction to guys in the 2 years of their sexual acting out. Are you all with me? For 2 years, he's been doing things sexually with other guys, but there's been 0 attraction in those 2 years. The attraction is a new thing. Come to find out, one of the older guys introduced all this to his group of 3 other friends, which is its own, that sexual abuse, that's its own thing, but that's not where I'm going with this story. What I'm talking about is the attraction versus access. My client, it felt good to have an orgasm. He couldn't go spend the night at a girl's house. His parents wouldn't let him go spend the night at a girl's house. But they had no problem with him spending the night with 3 friends. So pretty much every weekend for 2 years, they would just trade which house they're all going to go to. They all go to this person's house for this weekend and this person's house. For 2 years, they've just been doing this and having sexual encounters, basically oral sex and sexual touch, because it felt good, not because he's attracted to the guys. He just couldn't get it from a girl because his parents wouldn't let him go spend the night at a girl's house. That's what I mean by access. Now, this happens in youth group after youth group after youth group on youth trip because guys spend the night in the cabin all week at Bible camp together. It's access, not necessarily attraction. Now, for some, it is attraction. I'm not saying nobody's attracted. I'm just saying in some situations, it has nothing to do with attraction. It's just, as one guy said, if I close my eyes, it doesn't matter whether it's a guy or a girl performing oral sex on me. Definition of term, oral sex. Somebody's using their mouth on somebody else's genital area for the purpose of creating sexual arousal or sexual feeling. Is it access or attraction? Is it sexual versus is it exotic? Again, here's what I mean by exotic. It's the unknown. It's the mystique. For some guys or girls, it's I don't feel like that. It's like, okay, I'm working with a guy right now who is 17. He's a senior in high school. He is attracted to guys. He does not want it. He wasn't attracted to guys a few years ago, but he's been immersed in gay porn. And over the last couple of years, the gay porn has started to produce an attraction to guys that is sexual, but it didn't start out as that. It didn't used to be sexual. It was this, I wish I was that kind of guy. But my body doesn't look like that, and I don't feel like that. I don't have a tension from a guy in my life, meaning I have zero connection with my dad. My dad's practically non-existent. Lives in the house, but there's zero relationship. There is no time spent together, nor has there been. So this 17-year-old is craving attention from masculine. And he wants to be masculine like that, but he doesn't look at himself and think, I'm that kind of a guy. It's an exotic attraction. It's not a sexual desire. It's I want to be that. I want to be connected to that. I want to receive attention from that. I want to see validation from that. I want to be admired by that. So if people don't know how to put into words what's going on inside them, we may never get to this level of conversation. The only thing we may hear is, I'm a guy and I like guys, and it stops there, and people polarize. And all of a sudden, a parent is hearing, my 14-year-old is going to grow up and marry another guy and will never have grandkids. I mean, they're already, they're 20 years into the future. They're not dealing with right now. There's no benefit to that. But there can be great benefit in having the language to be able to unpack what is going on in somebody and what are they actually feeling, and are they open to trying to figure that all out. Sometimes it's a disidentification with their own gender. I was working with a guy, 16 years old. Parents brought him in because he wants to become a woman. So we just start, he is willing to come and have sessions. He's got no problem just coming and talking. And I'm not trying to talk him out of something. I'm trying to help him explore what's going on in him. So we start, about the third session or so, he gets into just how he and his dad, how he and his brothers relate. And he said, I will never, I wrote it down on my session note, but it will be in my brain forever. He said, let me just tell you, my dad and my two older brothers would just as soon rape a woman as have a conversation with her. That's his perception of masculine. What it means to be a man is that. He wants nothing to do with it. I don't blame him. I don't want anything to do with that concept of masculine. What's driving his desire to become a different gender is he wants nothing to do with what he believes masculine is because that's what he's been presented for 16 years. That's his perception of this is what it means to be a man. You have to basically have zero respect for women and just want to conquer them. Sometimes that dynamic is present or at play in same-sex issues or gender dysphoria issues. And sometimes it's the opposite gender is unsafe. When a little girl grows up and men are not safe because they misuse her sexually, there is another option. If men aren't safe, and it doesn't always play out this way, sometimes it plays out the opposite. So two different extremes. It can go to hypersexual in a heterosexual way, or it can go to same-sex orientation. And flip a coin. Which way is it going to play out? There are so many complicated dynamics behind that. There is no way to just say, okay, this time it's going to go. Who knows? I'm just saying sometimes it goes this direction, sometimes it goes that direction. But when somebody has grown up and their opposite gender is not safe, they want nothing to do with that. And the same thing for a little boy who his mom or some female in his life is abusive or hyper critical and demanding and constantly hovering and suffocating. Man, I want nothing to do with female. But I crave relationship and I crave attention. I crave connection. But it's like connection with female has been just muted because that's not safe. And so I end up going over in this direction over here. Those are just some of the dynamics that can be going on in the picture. Again, this is bird's eye view. This is not getting into all the nitty gritty of it. I'm just saying we need to be able to pause and have conversation and unpack Because if we just hear and then have a knee-jerk response to something because it doesn't match our spiritual values, or we have a knee-jerk response out of fear of what the future is going to look like, we can end up 10 steps down this path, and we might never even needed to go down that path. Because if 12-year-old boy says, I think I'm gay, and what parent hears is they want to have a boyfriend and they're going to get married to a guy, but what 12-year-old really means is when I'm in gym class and we're changing clothes, my eyes want to see other guys, and I don't know what that means. Maybe it means I'm gay. Do you see how one path, we don't need to go down that path. We need to go over here. But we didn't know we needed to go over there because we never stopped and asked. We just made an assumption. So, can learn a lot about sex from soda. I have a Coke, a Dr. Pepper, and a Sprite. 3 cans of soda. What's your favorite? Right? Coke. Okay. So if I hand you a Coke, are you good? Okay, I would still drink it. Is that what you want? No. Because that's not a Coke. Stay with me for just a second. Is your can the same size?
16 ounces.
Does yours have a lid that looks like this? Okay, if I take my lid and click it, I'm not going to, but if I popped it open, it would go click and then go tss. Would yours do the same thing? Ingredients: carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, and a bunch of chemicals. I can't pronounce them. I told you it's the same exact thing. Are you holding a Coke? At what point do you know it's not Coke? Okay, but the contents inside, like important, okay, because yes, taste. I mean, okay, it's a Sprite, it's clear, but when you taste it, you know, like the Dr. Pepper, the same thing. Thank you very much for being a good sport and going along with me there. They're different. There are similarities, but they're different. If you grew up, I grew up in high school years in North Carolina, and Coke is a Coke Coke just meant a carbonated drink, and it just okay, yeah. So give me a Coke. It doesn't matter what flavor, just a Coke. Yeah, they're similar, but they're different. Okay, here's where I'm going with that. In our culture, we confuse things that do have some level of similarity, but they're distinctly different. Okay, this is my behavior, it's what I do. Okay, so Coca-Cola is actions or behavior. Dr. Pepper is attraction, it's what grabs my attention. It's what tempts me. Okay, so attraction or temptation, that's Dr. Pepper. Sprite is my identity, it's who I am. Those are 3 different things, they're not the same. Where's Bible in all this? You're sounding like a lot of clinical stuff. Hebrews chapter 4. I'm going to illustrate some difference here. Talking about Jesus. For we have a high priest, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses. But we have one who's been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Tempted, I've got the word highlighted, tempted. Which can? Right, Dr. Pepper. It's what attracts me or tempts me. It grabs my attention. Tempted in every way, yet was without sin. Which can? Behavior, action. Okay? Without sin, my behavior was right. His behavior was right. There was no sin in his behavior. That's action. Guess what's missing in that passage? It doesn't tell us identity. Who is Jesus? Well, earlier, back in the book of Matthew, there was a conversation that starts happening, and Jesus asked that question. Who do people say I am? Well, some say John the Baptist, Jeremiah, Elijah, other prophets. Who do you say I am? And then here's Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit at that moment. When I say filled with the Holy Spirit, I think the Holy Spirit gives Peter some insight into a truth here. And so he actually gets the answer right. A lot of times he didn't, but this time he did. You're the Messiah, you're the Son of the living God. Boom, there's identity. Who was Jesus? Jesus was the, in human form, Son, right there in bold, right? Son of God. Jesus' identity was based on his relationship to the Father. If we anchor ourselves to an immovable object, can we be moved? If there is a mountain of granite that is not going anywhere, and you superglue or bolt yourself to that mountain of granite, you're not moving. Nobody's going to come along and just pull you away because you're anchored to an immovable object. If my identity is anchored to an immovable object, can my identity ever have an identity crisis? It's rock solid. If my identity is based in what I do, if my identity is I'm a professional football quarterback, and I've won Super Bowl after Super Bowl, and I am a quarterback, what happens when I retire? Do you see where I'm going? My identity suddenly, I don't have one. If my identity is I'm a cheerleader, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a this or that, if my identity is in any way based in what I do, well, sometimes what we do changes. I'm in an accident and I can't do that anymore. Or I have a health issue and I can't do that anymore. Or something happens and that job is taken away. I can't do that job anymore. Now I don't even know who I am, especially if it's involving around ministry. Like you let somebody who is a paid preacher and no longer are they a paid preacher. That can throw somebody into a big loop of who am I then? If we've lost ourselves and my identity is I'm a preacher. From a culture script, if I say I'm attracted to somebody of the same sex, what does our culture script say? If that's who I'm attracted to, what's our culture tell us? That's who you are. And because that's who you are, that's what you should do. Do you see the lineup? It says this determines that, so you should do that. I'm saying there's an alternative. We don't have to follow that cultural script. There's another option of saying who I am is a child of God. I am a person created in the image of God. That's who I am. Because that's who I am, that gives me direction of what I want to do in any temptation I face or in anything I'm attracted to. I'm going to let this be guided by this right here, which means I want my behavior to line up with the fact that I'm a child of God and I'm trying to make my attractions and thus my behavior fall in line with I'm a child of God. That's a different model. I'm saying I think that's taking a play from the Jesus playbook. I think that's a biblical concept of what identity means. This is who I am, and because that's who I am, everything else falls in line or is determined by that. Okay, that was the marshmallow of the s'more. Okay, we're switching now to the graham cracker of the s'more. Early sexual experience, sexual trauma, sexual abuse. What I mean by early sexual experience is we have a sexual encounter before the time God designed us to have it. Which means from theology of sex that we just had, if it's before that time, that would mean before marriage. If we have a sexual exposure or sexual encounter premature to God's plan, then that's earlier than it should happen. Sometimes those are by our choice. I choose to have a sexual encounter before I get married. Sometimes it's somebody else chooses to do that. Sometimes somebody pressures, manipulates, forces, coerces, pressures so often that I finally just stop saying, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But that's what I mean by early sexual encounter or sexual abuse. Okay, from an abuse standpoint, it's estimated that 20 to 40% of females are sexually abused by age 18. Okay, statistics are across the board. A lot of it is determined by what do you mean by sexual abuse. Are we defining rape? Does it have to be invasive sexual contact? Are we talking any level of touch? Are we including unwanted sexual advances or sexual comments or forced exposure? Because if we now go to that, what I would call a definition of sexual abuse is any unwanted touch or forced or uninformed exposure to sexual comments or sexual content. Okay, to me, that's a broad, inclusive definition of sexual abuse. If we open it up to that definition, the statistics are probably, I don't know, close to 100%. Back when the Me Too movement was first starting, and people were starting to share stories, and forget the politics of it. One of our podcast episodes is about beyond the politics of sexual abuse. I'm not interested in debating Me Too and the politics of it. I'm very interested in understanding people's stories and what people have lived through, male or female. I've seen a statistic, 3 out of 5 girls before they graduate from high school have experienced sexual abuse. I'm just saying that my experience over the last, probably especially 15 years, in doing presentations in youth groups and churches with all ages, is the statistics that I see cited are way under the anecdotal experience that I see on people's faces. And I hear that people share with me in comments after sessions. And then 27 to 30% of males are sexually abused. This is a meta-analysis. Okay, Salter's book is looking at research through years and years and years of research, and they're just kind of putting it all together. So this is not like one survey found this. This is a meta-analysis of data, and here's kind of, you put it all together, here's what it looks like. Again, I would say if you look at the 30 and under, right now, like the people who are 30 years old and under that are male in 2024, I think it's a way bigger, especially if you look at what teens have done to other teens, or what's happened sibling on sibling, family member like cousin on younger cousin. If we start to look at all of that experience, it is, I just anecdotally say the phrase, more people than not have experienced hurtful sexual encounters, because it just, the information that I hear from people, I think that's a pretty accurate statement to make. Just pick any church on any given Sunday morning and just recognize that more than half of the people who show up in that service have experienced some level of unwanted sexual contact, that male and female altogether. Results. Okay, what is in the wake of an early exposure, whether it's at 5, somebody showed me this, or somebody exposed himself to me, or over years and years I was raped or sexually abused for a prolonged period of time. Anywhere in those, between those two bookends, a lot of shame. Okay, shame. There's something wrong with me. Like I feel bad. I feel dirty. I just feel like something's bad or wrong about me. Fear. Is it going to happen again? What if people find out? Will people think it was my fault? Will I get in trouble? Will my family fall apart? I have been amazed at the number of young children and teenagers who don't talk about what happened to them because they're trying to protect their family. Whether it was grandpa, sibling, father figure, somebody, if they told about the sexual abuse, they feel like their family would fall apart and it would be their fault. And so they're not telling anybody is an effort to protect the family. That is a pretty common thing that oftentimes we don't stop and think about. Hurt, because hurt is a response, I feel there has been an attack, whether it's a physical attack, an emotional attack, or a rejection. And hurt is often in the picture. And then anger, but especially when we're talking about Christians, the anger is often buried underneath because it's not right to be angry, or I'm not supposed to be angry, or angry. Maybe we've seen anger not in a healthy way. We don't want any part of that. I hear from people who grew up in families where somebody had an anger problem and they have vowed they will never be like that person. And so they just completely shut down any anger. Well, it's in there. We can't just make anger not be there. We can deny it. We can try to clean it up and say it's just frustration. frustration and anger are not synonymous. Anger is a response to injustice. It is an emotion God gave us, and when there is something unfair, not right, unjust, we feel anger. That's how God wired us. And I'm just saying, when somebody's been hurt sexually, it is reasonable that they have anger, and it is okay that they have anger. And I'm hoping that we as Christian people are not trying to shut somebody down or tell them that they shouldn't feel angry, or try to hurry them through their anger by saying, well, you have to forgive them or God won't forgive you. That's warped theology. Again, I'll try to stay off my soapbox, but that's warped theology. That is not what Jesus was talking about. Jesus was not talking to sexual trauma victims and saying, if you don't forgive the person who did that, then you're not going to get into heaven. That is not a reasonable interpretation of what Jesus is saying. People need to be able to work through their anger and hopefully get to a place where they genuinely can forgive somebody. But we can't just say you have to forgive and expect that actually happens. Hyper alert. They live on hyper alert. Something that feels like. Now again, I'm not saying logically this is what people think. Just inside it feels like something bad is always going to happen. And so it's 24/7, always on the verge of an exaggerated startle response. Like if you walk up behind them and put your hand on their shoulder, they don't just turn around like, oh, somebody's here. It's like, now nobody can control that. That's not they're doing something wrong. That's their body is having a startle response, and it's coming from a legitimate place. That's just a normal part of somebody who has lived through a trauma experience. Mistrust. And things often generalize out. Sometimes things are very specific. Like if my mom's boyfriend abused me, I don't trust my mom's boyfriend. Okay, that's very legitimate. You shouldn't trust your mom. If he did that, you shouldn't trust him. But sometimes things generalize out. Like if mom's boyfriend had a really deep voice and was really hairy, then anytime I see a really hairy guy with deep voice, I may instantly have a response to that. Or sometimes it generalizes out, like really big generalize, all guys. All guys are like that. And again, we have no control over how our brain does that. I was sexually abused by a youth minister at a Bible camp at age 16. And at age 16, it felt to me like every minister was fake. I didn't care who they were. If they were a minister, they were fake. It generalized out. Again, I'm not saying that was a fair or realistic thing. That's how it felt to me, because this minister proved to be not trustworthy, and it just felt like all ministers were fake. Mental friction. The technical term would be cognitive dissonance. Mental friction to me is a more user-friendly. That's what's going on. I mean, the brain. This is happening in the brain, and the brain doesn't like it, and it's looking for a way to stop it. And there are a lot of ways that we can try to stop it that are subconscious defense mechanisms. We're not logically thinking and picking them; they just happen. And here are some pretty typical ones. I internalize responsibility. It's my fault. So a child's 4 years old, and they're abused by an older teenager. But to the 4-year-old, they should have been able to stop it. Now again, that's normal. That's the human thing, is to internalize responsibility. So it's typical that a 4-year-old would do that. I'm not saying it's realistic or that it should. I'm just saying it happens. So people internalize responsibility or feel like they deserved it. Well, if I hadn't... So one female I was working with, well, if I hadn't snuck out of the house and gone to his car with him, I wouldn't have gotten raped. So it's my fault. No? I get that it feels like that. I'm not arguing that she doesn't feel that way. I'm just saying, logic hat on for a minute. Is that accurate? Just because you snuck out of the house to go meet this guy and you thought you guys were just going to hang out for a while, does that mean you deserved to be raped? I mean, literally, logic, do those two equate? Well, no, they don't. You're right, they don't. But it doesn't stop it from feeling like that. And so for a lot of people, it just feels true, even though logically they might be able to see it shouldn't, but it still does. Constantly have to distract or avoid thoughts. Constantly doing something. I am a survivor of early childhood sexual trauma and adolescent, age 16, sexual trauma. I never had fingernails until I began recovery in 2002. I just always bit them down to the quick. I mean, sometimes I would bite them and they would bleed and it would hurt, but I couldn't not do it. I tried so many times to just like stop biting my nails. It might last a day. I couldn't not do it. It's the body trying to cope with anxiety. And it's a fairly common thing. I'm not saying everybody who bites their nails has been sexually traumatized. I'm saying it is a normal way of trying to do something with all that energy in there. And so people have to constantly be busy doing something. I can't sit down and be still. I remember I was a youth minister, summer intern, and one of the elders who was a retired bank executive asked me to come out and spend a day with him on his property. And so we went and we were driving the truck back and sit down, and he's out on his back porch reading a newspaper, and he just wanted me to just sit there, and I'm going nuts. After about 10 minutes, I left. I could not just sit in peace and quiet. Now, I had no idea why I couldn't. I just knew I'm going crazy here. I'm leaving. I have to always be busy doing something, because to just be calm and quiet and the stuff starts coming up. We oftentimes recreate or reenact the trauma. Now, please hear me. This is not a logic, I'm choosing to do it thing. I was speaking at a church in Texas several years ago. I got a text followed by a long email about a week or two later. It was a young lady in a highly professional, skilled occupation, and she shared all the stuff you talked about was accurate. I mean, basically, it's how I've lived. She said, I grew up going to church and in part of the purity movement. I bought it all. I wore the ring. I was determined I was not going to have sex until I got married. She said, when I got to college, I met a guy and we got engaged, and then we had sex. But she said, Steve, I thought I could still tell my children I've only had sex with their father. And then her fiance's best friend raped her. And in the next 18 months, she had over 30 anonymous sexual partners. She's reenacting the trauma. It is a subconscious thing. It is not they want to experience the excitement of sex. I saw that come out of the mouth of a law enforcement officer on TV. So I'm not saying like a real live law enforcement, it was on TV. No, it wasn't. It was a podcast from a real live law enforcement. No, that is a gross misrepresentation of that dynamic. People are not hypersexual because they want the thrill of sex. They're recreating the trauma, which is a typical trauma bond response. So before we start pointing fingers and calling names of people, and you know the terms in our culture that get thrown at people who are hypersexual or sexually promiscuous or having sex with multiple people, before we start throwing around terms, might be helpful to step back and say, hold on, what might have happened in their life that would put them in a position of behaving that way? Because there's way more going on than just the spiritual lens. I agree it is sinful behavior. I don't need an email or a side conversation saying, Steve, it's sinful. And here's right here. You're exactly right. I get that it's sinful. No argument there. I'm just saying it goes way beyond just the spiritual lens. There is an emotional lens. There is a relational lens. There is a mental lens. And all of that deserves to be looked at. I'm not saying the behavior is okay. I'm saying there is a reason for it. And oftentimes it goes back to somebody's recreating or reenacting the trauma that they experienced. And then minimize the pain. All of this is an effort to minimize the pain. And sometimes we minimize it by saying it was no big deal. Having sex with over 30 anonymous sex partners screams sex means nothing. Behavior is a voice. Behavior says stuff we don't know how to say, or it's not safe for it to come out of our mouths, so our behavior says it. And that behavior says sex doesn't matter. Because if I can make sex not matter, then what happened to me, it's no big deal. It minimizes the pain. Consent requires, you have to be old enough to consent. A 12-year-old is not old enough to consent. A 14-year-old is not old enough to consent in most states. That age is backed down as our culture has less and less boundaries around sexuality. But whereas it used to be a lot of states you had to be 18 or 17, now it's probably more 15 and 16. I haven't done the research to verify how many states what age is, but a person, number one, has to be old enough to consent. And by all means, a 7-year-old or an 11-year-old, there is no consent in that. Mental status has to be functional. They cannot be under duress. They can't be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. They cannot be in panic mode by fear of what's going to happen. As one girl said, I was afraid if I didn't let him do that, I was afraid that something worse would happen. That's not consent. That's fear and being paralyzed. There can't be a pressure to do it. Like, I've asked 50 times, and 49 times you've said no, but on the 50th time you finally just don't say anything. Or you say, I guess, and I take that as now I can do whatever I want to do. No, that's not consent. That's pressuring somebody. That's disrespecting their belief. That's disrespecting what they want. It's definitely not consent. There has to be a lack of a power differential. A person can't be your employer and you give consent, because there's a power differential in that. It can't be your landlord and it be consent, because underneath that, as one 18-year-old I was talking with, he is my boss and I rent my house from him. There's no consent in that. It's fear of, if I say no, I'm going to get kicked out and I'm going to have no job. And having been on her own since age 15, it's a very legitimate fear of not having a job and not having a place to live. That's not consent. There has to be an awareness of the situation. If somebody is basically manipulating me into a spot, they know what's going to happen and I have no idea. Again, I think I'm just going to hang out with my boyfriend. But I come to find out he's been planning this for weeks, and he got me to a place where there's nobody else around. And I don't know what to do. I wasn't prepared for this. That's not consent. That's manipulation and coercion. There has to be an active desire to participate. Just they didn't say no is not saying yes. Oftentimes they didn't say no comes from, well, they've said no 40 times before. Or they're paralyzed with fear and they don't say anything. So they didn't say no is not, that made it okay. It's, let's call it what it is. When it's not consensual, it's sexual abuse. It's rape. Okay, the piece of chocolate in the s'more. We've talked about same-sex issues, sexual preference. We talked about early sexual encounters, and now we're looking at basically addictive sexual behavior or problematic sexual behavior. If we look at Romans 7, it's the I know what's right and I want to do what's right, but I keep doing the wrong thing. And I hate the wrong that I do, but I keep on doing it. Now that's a loose paraphrase, but that's basically what Paul says in Romans 7. Countless Christians are in this cycle. I know it's wrong, I don't want to do it, but I keep on doing it, and I don't even know why I'm doing it. This is 2009 study. This is now, today is February the 10th? 9th, 10th, I think 10th, of 2024. That's basically 15 years later. But 15 years ago, of North American university students, half of guys and basically a third of girls first viewed porn before their teenage years. 15 years later, with every child having a smartphone and getting on YouTube and social media of all kinds, and stuff is flooded. Okay, when I'm in the gym, which is about every day, sometimes twice a day, I'm listening, the earbuds are in, and I've got YouTube going on whatever Christian music it can be a cappella something going on, or it can be instrumental something going on, but it is 99% I'm listening to Christian music. And that's what my YouTube stuff history is. But I get advertisements that are my husband, and you need this medicine, or you need this device, and it's, you got about 3 or 4 seconds on almost all of them that you have to watch before you can even hit the skip button now. And so I'm saying if that's what's coming into my 99% Christian music listen to list on, I can't imagine what comes in on the average teenager's stuff. It's everywhere, and you cannot keep it from getting to your kids or your grandkids. We can't stop it from getting to them. The best we can do is equip them for how to respond to it, and hopefully make it safe enough that they'll talk to us when it does find them, because it's going to find them. They can either keep it quiet and private and shameful, and it will run its course, or they can talk to us and get help and figure out a way to process it. But whatever it was 15 years ago, obviously those stats are now, way further to more people have viewed it, and at a younger and younger age are they seeing it. We're going to switch gears for a few minutes before we wrap up here. And somebody just give me the time. What? Okay, so we got basically 20 minutes before we're going to take a supper break. We're going to switch gears from it. We're going to have some fun up here on stage. What we're going to do has nothing to do with sex. So you guys, or whichever the case may be. Okay, nothing to do with sex. We're going to do a fun activity. I'll need a few volunteers to help me do it. And then we're going to look back and see what's going on here, and see some dynamics that do relate to this cycle of, I know it's wrong, but I keep doing the very thing that I know is wrong. I have a friend in recovery who used the phrase, said, addiction is when I can't get enough of the thing that I hate. I thought, that's a really good, I like that. I'm going to borrow that one, because that, in a nutshell, that I hate what I do, and I can't stop doing it. That was Paul's way of describing it. So I need somebody who really likes chocolate milk. Do we have a chocolate milk connoisseur in the group? Would you come up and help me out? Do you really like chocolate milk? Do you really like chocolate milk? Okay, come on up. That's what I was looking for right there. Okay, give me just a second. We're going to get this checkers board out of the way. And I'm going to move this cooler up here. And if you would just have a seat right here on stage, or if we can pull up a chair if you'd rather be more comfortable in a chair, it's your choice.
That's all right, you can help me out.
I'll do my best. If I can get up, I can help you up. Okay. Right. Now, in this is Purity chocolate milk. We try to do the best at Ultimate Escape. So now that we're back based in the Nashville area, I have my Purity milk as my go-to chocolate milk. And if you drink all of that, you are welcome. You guys probably didn't have a good view in here, but if he runs out of that, there's another one. And if he goes through 2, there's another. If he finishes the 3rd one off, there's another. If he finishes, well, you guys get the idea. Okay, so you are welcome to all the chocolate milk that you would like to drink. It is free and it is yours. How does this feel right now?
I'm excited.
All right, there we go. I'm excited. Okay. Perfect. So we're going to let you, I'm going to do some other things while you're enjoying the chocolate milk there. I need somebody, now this has nothing to do with you. Just when I say this, just know we're not talking about you. Okay? I need somebody who likes to hit people. You're not going to hit him. You're not going to hit him. But would you come help me out? Okay? I need you to come up here and come join me up here, because in a moment you're going to use these and hit me in the head. But give me just a moment before we get started. If you would stand with your back against this, and there you go, perfect. Okay. See, I need somebody who can multitask, can walk and chew gum at the same time. Do we have a multitasker in the group? Okay. I'm going to move these cans out of the way. If you would come stand, just stand. Come stand right this part of the stage here, okay? Okay. Yeah, just up here and right there. And then I need somebody who's not afraid of just a little exercise. Oh, right on this side, let's get somebody new, hadn't been up here yet. Not afraid of a little exercise. Okay. I ask you if you would stand right here. Okay. I'm going to put this in your hand. And somewhere up here we go. Little 2-pound weights, if you take one in each hand. And then if you would pop those out 90 degrees perpendicular and just hold on right there. And then I want you to start counting in your head. Okay. There's just 1, 2, this speed, 3, 4, 5. You keep on counting. Okay. When you get to 1,000,000, put those down. Okay. Now I'm going to stand right here. And in just a moment, when I say go, I want you to hit me in the back of the head, not the ears, just the back of the head. But don't do this little tap, tap. Just like whack. Just like really hit me in the back of the head. But nothing below your chin height. Okay, so like nothing, only here and up. Nothing down in this range. Okay. Okay. Again, you stay right there and only this level and higher. Back of the head, not the ears. Go. No, go ahead. Do better than that part. There you go. That's it. Okay, now go over and over and over. Okay, that doesn't feel good. Matter of fact, it doesn't feel good, so I want to do this right here. Whew, that's better. It's quiet. It doesn't hurt. But if you've ever held this position, you know this doesn't feel good either. Because right now my knees are shaking, and I'm getting warm, and I've got to get some relief, so back up I go. And when I do, yep, exactly. There you go. Whew, man, this is better. This doesn't feel, this whole thing is bad. I got to find somewhere that feels better than that, okay? Don't go anywhere, because I'll be back. We're going to find something that feels better than that right there. So your job is look through the binoculars, and for the next 60 seconds, only look through the binoculars. Your job is to know where this orange puffy ball is at all times. Oh, don't take them dead. Only look through the binoculars. There you go. Your job is catch the ball and then throw it to somebody. Don't just like wildly throw it behind. Just catch it, throw it to somebody else. We're just going to keep it moving around the room. And you're going to focus on this and know where it is at all times. Ready? Go. Know where that is at all times. Okay, where's the ball? Where's the ball? There you go. Okay, it's coming around. How many fingers am I holding up? Where's the ball? Okay, if you would bring it back up this way, you're doing a great job knowing where the ball is. Okay, pause. Number.
114.
Really?
Really?
Okay. How do you feel?
It's not good. I wish I could pick the chocolate up.
Tell me more about not good. Right now, my shoulders feel
On fire.
okay. Set those babies down. If you really had to hold those out until you got to 1,000,000, how would that be?
It would.
Exactly. It wouldn't. Okay, this is despair. This is I can't do it. No matter how hard I'm trying, because I'm trying, no matter how hard I'm trying, it's not going to work. Okay, this is despair. I asked you to focus on the ball, and you can take this down now. 60 seconds is up. Good. 60 seconds is up. I asked you to focus on the ball, and you did. Every time I asked, you knew exactly where it was. I asked you a question, how many fingers am I holding up? And you said, no idea. Okay, but it was just like right here. It was like 12 inches away from you, and you didn't know because why? Yeah, okay, this is preoccupation. In my preoccupation with this out here, I can't be present in the moment right here where I'm at. We get preoccupied with finding an escape from that back there that doesn't feel good. Okay, I'm doomed either place. It hurts here. This is that's anxiety. It just doesn't feel good no matter what. It doesn't feel good. That's anxiety. We get preoccupied with finding something that feels better. How you doing right now? Which number are you on?
Number 1.
Okay. And you still got 1, 2, 4, several in there. Would you like another one?
Yes, I will.
Okay. How's your stomach feeling right now?
Full.
But you want another one?
Well, if you need me to.
Okay, a moment ago, this was really exciting.
It was exciting.
How is it feeling now?
I've probably had about enough.
So you do not have to drink. I mean, like I said, you are welcome to all you want, but you don't have to drink any particular amount. This is exciting until it's not. Okay, this is acting out. This is we find a behavior that escapes the anxiety. This feels great until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's despair. I can't do this anymore, which brings us right back to, exactly, yes. I don't like it. And we just spin through this. Every once in a while, do we have any elders of this church in this group right now? Okay, would you come and help me out for just a moment? Since you're already up here, I'm going to ask you to come help me out. Now, I'm just going to grab this chair right here, and I'm going to put it right here. If you would come and stand in that chair. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, for the moment, would you just hold on? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay, now you're just going to stand right there. That's it. Okay, now, it's going to get even better. Okay? This right here is the place of resolve. We are not having anything to do with that anymore. And the way we're not going to do it is we're going to focus on God. I am going to sheer willpower, focus on God. I've got nothing more to do with that. I have been convicted. I am motivated. I'm going to pray harder. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to fast. I'm going to do all these things so that I'm not doing that anymore. So I need you to focus on God by turning your head up and as far away from this, but don't move your shoulders. Just turn your head around as far back away as you can.
Which way?
That direction over there. There you go. As high up and as far away as you can. Pause. If we just let 5 minutes fast forward, how's your neck going to be feeling?
I don't know that I can move it now.
What do you want to do?
Look straight forward.
Okay, go ahead and look where feels better. And what do you see?
The audience.
Yep, and
Frank.
right there we are, right back again. We can only hold resolve for a little bit, and resolve gives way because we just can't keep it up, and we go right back to and spin right through this again. Okay, you can come on down. Thank you very much. You guys can have a seat. Appreciate your help. Give them a hand. Good job. It's exciting until it's not. This is the cycle of addiction. Okay, this is based off of Dr. Patrick Carn's cycle of sexual addiction. I've changed the terminology a bit to put it more in cognitive behavioral terms, but this is basically the cycle of addiction. And this hopefully gives us some insight into how does somebody say, I'm never going to do that again. And then they do it again. And they genuinely thought they would never do it again. And they genuinely feel really bad for what they did. But then they do it again. Male, female, it doesn't matter race, it doesn't matter age. The conversation just a couple of days ago. 9-year-old boy submits something in the prayer request box at church. 9 years old. It says, I'm addicted to sex. He's 9. He wants help. He knows what he's doing is not good. He doesn't know how to stop. I'm saying it doesn't matter what age somebody is. The youngest situation I have heard of, and it's not like I hear of every situation under the sun. The youngest I've heard of is a 6-year-old addicted to porn, being treated for porn addiction. It doesn't matter 6 or 100. And if you had about 5 hours, I would just start sharing the stories of ministers and Christian college administrators and directors of Bible departments at Christian universities and elders, and the list goes on and on and on, of people who have high profile, internationally known. If I said their name, you'd know exactly who it was, who are struggling and don't know how to stop. This is a real thing, and it's not just a spiritual issue. It's not just a they need to know God better, and it's not just a they got to pray more. It goes beyond the spirit. It is sinful behavior. Again, no dispute on that, and I'm not trying to minimize and say it's not a big deal. I'm just saying it's more than just sinful. There are other parts of the way God designed this that are at play in this also. So before we wrap up and have a supper break, just to look at some of the consequences. Fatigue. When people are, I've had several 12-year-old clients whose parents found their porn addiction because they couldn't get their kid to get up to go to school in the morning. When somebody's out at a bar until 2 o'clock and they have to get up at 6 o'clock, go to work, they're not very functional the next day. Social withdrawal, people will stay home instead of doing something that they could be doing with other people because it's an opportunity to act out. Unfulfilled responsibilities. People don't do the things that they need to do because they're too busy acting out. Damaged reputation, somebody finds out. Again, the news stories are filled with people who they're known for this. One of the more recent ones, the director of an international prayer ministry, has been discovered that there's a lot of sexual background that's been going on for decades. Internationally known, highly connected in some of the most popular names in our contemporary Christian religious, I don't know the term to use for it. It's an economic engine of religious activity. And when people find out, the reputation is destroyed. Disease, loss of job, financial loss, broken relationships. A family several years ago, 14-year-old son, 16-year-old sister. 14-year-old boy has a friend come spend the night. During the night, 16-year-old sister comes into the bedroom, gets the friend, invites him back to her bedroom. They have sex. 14-year-old brother finds out. He is furious, wants nothing to do with his sister, and for years there was no relationship between the two of them. Legal problems. Sometimes little legal problems like it costs me money to support a child until they're grown up. Sometimes it's big legal problems like I'm paying millions and millions of dollars because I have sexually abused somebody. Feels like two people in the same body. Like there's this Christian side of me, there's this part of me that loves God, and then there's this part of me that can't stop doing this. And it feels like literally I'm two different people. That's why I've got the picture of Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk. It literally feels like there's this monster inside of me, and I can't get rid of it. A barrier between self and God. Like, I feel so guilty over what I'm doing. It's hard to have a relationship with God in that process. And then erode satisfaction in marriage. Again, Play-Doh. When I've got all this other stuff going on, it's really hard to find fulfillment in what's going on within my marriage. We're going to hit a pause button right there. It's time for a dinner break, and we've been just plowing through information. So let's take an hour of feed your belly and let your brain relax, and then we'll come back in an hour and we'll talk about how do we talk to our children, grandchildren, children that we are a mentor or a voice of truth in their life. How do we have conversation, whether they're 4 or 5 years old or 18 years old or 20 years? How do we have healthy conversations that can shape their direction and hopefully a different direction in our family tree starts to emerge. Matthew, I turn it over to you.